Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So let's sit for a few minutes in silent meditation. Let's now cultivate the merit field with Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of us, surrounded by his disciples and students through the ages to the present time. Buddha Shakyamuni glowing with radiance, with his face sporting great compassion towards everyone. Imbued with those qualities of perfections. Reflect for a while how Buddha attained full awakening. What did it take for him? For how long? What were the main elements of the path that he practiced and that led him to full awakening? Thinking along these lines, particularly how he began his journey with the cultivation of great compassion, which led to the following paths. But at the same time, great compassion just didn't come that easily. Think of the different aspects of great compassion. What did it take for great compassion to arise? What motivated him? And how the whole path changed as soon as he gave rise to great compassion. The attainment of great compassion marks one's determined, sure, certain journey in the path of the Bodhisattvas, aimed at achieving full awakening. That marks what we call the activation of the Mahayana disposition in a sure, grounded footing, so that now the path ahead is clear. Thinking of these, let's generate admiration, reverence, filling us with a sense of inspiration, gratitude. Likewise, think of the masters from the time of Buddha to the present, who through their practices achieved varying levels of advancement and then left behind a legacy of profound, practical, compassionate writings for us to learn from, to study, to grow from. Take a moment here in visualizing fellow sentient beings, all of them without exception, surrounding us in human forms, yet undergoing their own respective predicaments, limitations, submerged as they are, like oneself, in confusion, ignorance. Despite that, we depend on each other and extend our helping hand, directly, indirectly, just about every step of our life. Let this reflection generate a sense of affinity, thinking about the common humanity that we share with each other. This growing into a sense of empathy into each other's conditions, particularly of suffering, of bondage, to the afflictions and the karmas induced by them. Bolster this sense of empathy even stronger by reflecting on the interdependent nature of our life, how we have been recipient of the benefits, kindness of each other. The myriad sentient beings have been so kind. None of them can be said to have not served as our mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, teachers, serving us even at the cost of their lives. Despite themselves struggling with confusion, ignorance, let this sense of empathy grow into compassion, into a sense of resolve that I must do something, given that I have this vantage point, vantage life of being born as precious human being, complete with all the fortunes and freedom. When would be the opportunity to make the most of, if not this time, so that one could go the path that the Buddhas have walked on, and thus serve sentient beings in the most effective, true way. Adding ourselves to the files and ranks of Buddhas, so that with our unique individual conditions, we could at the very least serve those with karmic connections with us, and be always be available for any help that would be needed, that could be extended. Let this resolve grow into Bodhisattva, seeing the attainment of full awakening, the one and the only way by which one could serve sentient beings in the most true and effective sense. While we retain this bodhicitta, will recite the homage together. And also while we do so, try to come up with a better sense of the words that we say and let the mind mold into those respective attitudes.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, oneness gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, no, the world supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, prostrate make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you are born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you, grow wise, that I bow. With pure body's form, supremely fine, wisdom motion like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner, the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, as an ocean to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path of freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field, endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of the lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash, a lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this spirit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the four faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Iram Guru Rana Mandalakam Hiryatayam.
I take refuge until I am awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. Let's for a while sit with Bodhicitta in our mind. once again strengthening it, bolstering it with many-sided reasonings, insights that you could bring in. Beginning with how it is possible, why it is needed. Towards the end of realizing this aspiration, one has to train in the 3 trainings involving studying, reflecting, and internalizing them. Towards that end, we are gathered here. That is sharing of the Dharma. Let this be the motivation for this session and beyond. Okay. Here's a question here. Could you explain more and give examples of how self-centeredness can be a positive one? How we can notice and change our motivation and doing mind transformation on that? It seems like self-care and self-centered is very subjective, and we should keep to our motivation. Good one, even if challenged. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, when I'm talking about self-centeredness, that too in the Buddhist context, I'm thinking more of the Tibetan term and its uses and its application. Tibetan term is Rangdun Yije. It's there are 2 terms for that. Rang Tenzin. Rang Tenzin means holding oneself dear or cherishing self. Whereas when it is conveyed in English, they mean a little different. So that's why self-centeredness seems to be more appropriate in speaking of the damages that it could bring. And the other term used in Tibetan is Rangdun Yije, with the mind, harboring a mind, going after one's own interest. So basically, self-centeredness, I think it will be interesting to see I have not shared this slide with you, worrying that it might be it might add to the already multiple numbers of slides, too many slides. So from the volume 5 of the Library of Wisdom and Compassion, His Holiness lays out 3 self-centeredness. Course 1. The course 1 considers ourselves as more important than others and prioritizes our own happiness in this life. This self-centeredness leads us not only to be apathetic towards others' welfare, but also create a great deal of destructive karma. So it can do, not the, so what I see here and how we understand in Tibetan also, self-centeredness, kind of self-centeredness as we translate it, with kind of stands out in being a very unique thing, kind of self-centered and creepy. In a way, it kind of really stands out among all the afflictions. It's not either affliction, neither negative, could be positive, could be neutral. So kind of it's creepy and deceptive in that form also. And very often it goes hand in hand with self-cherishing. They're almost like brothers. But self-cherish, what I meant self-grasping. They go hand in hand with self-grasping, kind of blot together. But then, when there's a need, self-centeredness can even get at self-grasping. And thus an arhat can attain liberation by tamping, not just tamping down, but kind of completely eradicating self-grasping. But then the self-centeredness has its own limit. It cannot go beyond that. That's the best it could deliver. And there's a limitation there. And that from a Bodhisattva's eye is a big, kind of a big loss. Big loss in the big loss of potential. In that someone gets stuck in individual liberation for who knows how long. And even for Buddhas it takes so long to convince them to kind of walk on the highway of the Bodhisattvas. That's about the best it can get us to, and that's the reason why, in that sense, why in that perspective, in that context, self-centeredness, while retaining its own main, basic element, kind of improves itself into a wish to attain liberation. It takes on that cloak, and that's how it is positive at that time. And then it stays positive and leads Shravakas and Prakrika Buddhas on that path to full awakening. Of course, on an individual level, that's a wonderful attainment in that one becomes completely free from the samsara, and at the same time be equipped with that not just knowledge but experience, personal experience of how to come to that, arrive at that stage. So could have that great potential to eventually serve sentient beings. But there's more to pursue, again, to be of the utmost effective benefit to sentient beings. But then from that point onward, self-centeredness stops. The path beyond that, self-centeredness has no use and no interest even. In a way, you could say self-centeredness has no interest beyond that, and it cannot lead beyond that. So for someone who is pursuing full awakening, as I said yesterday, self-centeredness is the most worrisome and most problematic, almost like a thorn in the eye of a bodhisattva. So they remain so cautious, even after having generated bodhicitta for so long, cautious in kind of maintaining their bodhicitta for fear that it might be lost, until and unless they develop their strength to the level of becoming an irreversible bodhisattva. From then on, then they can stay carefree, be fully assured that bodhicitta will be always there, unscathed and uncompromised at all. So they strive for that, not that this irreversibility stage comes on its own. They strive for that, along with being cautious and kind of very vigilant in keeping it intact from being compromised by any sneaky, creepy, what do you call, tries from self-centeredness. And then eventually build that confidence. For some, it even takes until they attain the seventh, or I think the seventh bhumi. And then here the course self-centeredness considers ourselves as more important than others. So the question is, whether self-centeredness itself takes this explicit form of seeing oneself as more important than others, or is it growing from that ground into a form of caring for oneself? I mean, of course, behind the scene, there's this belief, or this unquestioned consideration, unquestioned understanding that yes, one is more important than others. But the question is whether self-centeredness itself takes that explicit form, and whether it is part and parcel of self-centeredness itself when it is manifest. The reason why I say this is, in the book, in the volume 5, as well as in the scriptures also, when the most common example of self-centeredness, by reason of which we have this doubt, this unease in putting self-centeredness into any other category, but holding it into this space of either neutrality or positivity, is because of this aspiration to attain individual liberation, which has been so clearly mentioned as Rang Tenzin, or self-centeredness. And that aspiration basically is aspiring to attain individual liberation. Although we usually say aspiring to attain liberation for oneself alone, I don't think they explicitly say, I want to. I don't think so. Because when they generate it for themselves, but not necessarily only they should attain awakening or liberation. They want liberation for themselves. Whereas bodhisattvas, when they generate someone who has been already influenced by bodhisattva ideal and have this aspiration, and then eventually actually embark on the path, beginning with generating the desire to attain liberation for oneself, they do so with a Mahayana tinge, by saying, I want to attain this, not just for myself, just so that I could then move forward to benefit sentient beings. There's already a tinge there. For those without that tinge, they could start out with a motivation as a Sravaka or a Padayaka Buddha. Eventually, before waiting until they attain liberation, they could switch. There are even references in the scripture from what path level they make the shift. Yeah, so it seems like any self-interest for oneself, any attitude, any aspiration, any desire to serve oneself, not for the sake of others, but serve oneself, seems to fit into this category of self-centeredness. That's the reason why I was willing to say, the very fact that we live our life in the way we do, kind of going about our business, even that seems to be self-centeredness. But very important to warn here, self-centeredness in the culture, Western culture, it may be seen in different ways that I do not know clearly. If it is seen in negative form or whatnot, then that's definitely not what is implied here. That's the reason why I was quick in pointing out that self-centeredness is not even negative, not even non-virtue. If at all, at the least it is a neutral state of mind, or it could be a positive one. Nonetheless, the damages it creates is huge. And then at the same time, self-centeredness has this risk. I mean, unless the self-centeredness is smart enough to rise up to the occasion and say, how could I be sensibly self-centered? Then it could choose to hold afflictions accountable for all the sufferings and be a force against them. And thus, this aspiration to attain liberation arises. But that's not easy coming, that's not natural for self-centeredness. Self-centeredness could be as blind as we are, confused as we are, and thus choose afflictions as its means to achieve its interest. That's usually the case for us. And for Bodhisattva, that's not only the reason why they are worried. They even are worried about its good form in the virtuous state of mind. Even that is problematic for them, even more so. Yes, please.
If self-centeredness is choosing the afflictions to achieve its own end,
Yes, that's what I said.
how can it not be negative? How can self-centeredness then at worst be just neutral? I don't understand how it's not negative.
Yeah, it chooses. That means it is not that. When it chooses afflictions, it's not that. Even take the case of self-grasping. Self-grasping is the root of all the afflictions. Without it being eliminated, afflictions have no way to be eliminated. But self-grasping is neutral. Never positive, but never negative. At least in the scriptures, it is very clear. So earlier we were having this afflicted minds retreats. I was very particular in pointing out afflictions are neither necessarily all negative, no, not at all positive, but some are neutral, some could be innate, some could be even acquired. And there were other things we listed it. I cannot remember, but this is very interesting to see. That kind of brings out the complexity of the issue. And the same case with what we call non-virtue. There's another term, kanamatoa. Which is usually translated as misdeed or wrong deed, something, but it's not necessarily deed. But there's difficulty in conveying it. So, yeah, so in that book, in that volume 5, that's the first core self-centeredness is considering ourselves more important than others, prioritizes our own happiness, and it leads us not only to be apathetic towards others because of our obsession to our self-interest, we could be kind of blinded to others' interests. That's what apathy is. And then not only that, it could even be, even take a notch ahead, and then choose afflictions as a means to achieve its goals. Because it is at that unsophisticated, uninformed, unsmart, if I may say, form It is desperate to choose just any means to meet its interest. And then the volume gives a less coarse form of self-centeredness seeks our own fortunate rebirth in samsara. It's a virtuous attitude, even though it cares more for ourselves than others. Cares more for ourselves than others seems to fit here, because everything that we do for ourselves, it's an indication. If we don't do that, if we don't do that to ourselves for the sake of others, then doing that just for ourselves is putting ourselves foremost. But the attitude itself may or may not come with that explicit content. And then the subtle self-centeredness is the mind that seeks liberation for ourselves alone. It is also a virtuous attitude and is not an object of abandonment in general. It's a valid mind that enables Sravakas and solitary realizers to abandon harming others and to attain liberation. Here's an interesting, here is an interesting, in the volume 5, there's a quote from Lamrim Chemo, Tsongkhapas Lamrim Chemo. It kind of summarizes the defects of self-centeredness and kind of puts some sort of self-centeredness in some context. Out of attachment to self, not that it is attachment to self, out of attachment to self, that's how I read. Out of attachment to self, I mean at the initial unsophisticated, uninformed, uncultivated level, it could take resort to attachment. For you to for you to have a reason or support to rise up. You are attached to oneself and thus is interested in one's own well-being, health. So out of attachment to self, my self-centeredness, self-centered attitude has produced all sorts of undesirable things throughout the beginningless time of cyclic existence up to now. Now the question is, does it always have to come from a self-attachment? Most of the cases at our unsophisticated, uninformed level, it is just desperate to use any support, any base for it to go forward and realize its interest, or for it to kind of stand on the ground of. So out of attachment to self, my self-centered attitude has produced all sorts of undesirable things throughout the beginningless time of cyclic existence up to now. Although I wanted to make things perfect for myself, I emphasized my own well-being and engaged in improper methods. Engaged in improper methods is because of its unsophistication at that level. It could be more sophisticated in choosing more better methods, but usually that's what it is. Even self-centeredness kind of has range of improvement, of kind of pruning and although I wanted to make things perfect for myself, I emphasized my own welfare and engaged in improper methods, which doesn't necessarily have to be, but that's usually the case. That's why self-centeredness leads to choosing afflictions, and instead of curbing them, instead of undermining them, it kind of boosts them, it kind of nurtures them as its own subjects. I have spent countless eons at this, but have not at all accomplished my own or others' aims. Not only have I not achieved this, but I have also been tormented only by suffering because of the wrong choice I made. If I had replaced concern for my own welfare with concern for others' welfare, I would certainly have already become a Buddha long ago, and would have completely and perfectly accomplished my own aims as well as those of others. As I did not do this, I have spent my time uselessly and laboriously. Of course, laboriously, always working, work hard at work, never standing in rest, but for not any good purpose. So this kind of situates self-centeredness in terms of where it comes from, what kind of support it uses, and what does it do going forward, and what's the result of it. So I see that if we don't have the Buddhist overview of life after life and how we have been circling all this time around with no end in sight, etc. If we don't use that worldview, then there's no problem with kind of just going about one's business. But if we look from their worldview, then just going about is not enough. It's not the best way to use our time, because it just doesn't get anywhere. That's the reason why I had the gut to say maybe it extends to more, even including self-care, unless it is done for the sake of others. That's the reason why I'm saying it. One could still do self-care, but with a greater vision for the purpose of others. One doesn't have to do anything extra. Just keep on doing self-care, except if we bring that angle to that work. Of course, grounded in our insight, understanding of how reality works, etc., and build a strong basis for coming from that angle. Then we could be as caring and doing even better and feeling better, and the prospects would all be much, much better. Yet at the same time, not lagging behind in self-care. Let alone that, even along with the passage, we could be even not only mentally willing, but eventually growing into actually being of service to others. And this thought of full awakening comes only by way of that. So I think this question is also touched. Oh yeah, I think the question is touched. I think. So if we hold the Buddhist worldview, then there is really need of really making a shift in how we care for ourselves. And that makes perfect sense even in practical life also, in terms of how we hold ourselves, how we kind of bring a larger purpose behind just about everything. That's the reason why we stress on cultivating proper motivation with the touch of bodhicitta in the beginning, and then towards the end of the day kind of review, and then kind of next day the same thing, kind of, and then revisiting the motivations over the day, several times. So one of the guidelines of cultivating what we call aspiration in bodhicitta is to cultivate bodhicitta 6 times in 24 hours. And the reason for doing that is that it will keep it fresh, and everything that we do will be lively touched by it. And before we lose the momentum of the previous cultivation, we'll be able to pick it up. And then if we do so with those special additional guidelines called the avoiding 4 negative dharmas, adopting 4 positive dharmas, then it is said in the scriptures that will also help remember bodhicitta in our future lives. So we see around us and amongst us how some people very easily click to bodhicitta. The mere mention is enough. Likewise with the understanding of emptiness also. For some, the first time they come upon it, they kind of are in tears, moved with goosebumps like that. How in the world can that difference happen? Okay, so I think that should be enough for self-centeredness because we'll be lagging behind. Could we move down to more down? So we wouldn't have time to deal with this. But the slides are available, so if you're interested, yes. No, we can move on. Now from today we'll deal with the topic of Shila. Okay, for now we will make use of this in seeing them. Yes, we can stop here. No, we move it one more. Yes. Okay, you and one more. Oh yeah. Oh no, the previous one. Sorry. Yes. Yes. So last few years, Venerable has taught on the perfection of generosity, and this year it will be perfection of ethical conduct or ethical disciplines, and hopefully in the coming years we will be able to take one perfections at a time and finish them. So this year we are going to take up the ethical conduct. And it's interesting, in the scriptures it mentions that bodhisattvas, once you have generated that aspiration, or one is kind of an aspirant to that aspiration, and kind of doing one's best in kind of gathering whatever dharma forces, dharma elements one need to be complete with to kind of move on that path. It says that their work, their task is only two. One is taming themselves, the other is taming others. Because taming oneself comes first, because the aspiration is big to attain full awakening. To attain full awakening, so that we usually say for the sake of all sentient beings. But again, this term "sake of" is so what is the term? Not it is imbued with meaning. It has a more heavier connotation there. For the sake of sentient beings means you want to attain full awakening so that others could be led to the same state of being. That's what the Buddhas want. That's what Bodhisattvas want. They do not want to keep Buddhahood for them and then kind of let others settle on a lesser one. So the best would be to place them to full awakening, if not for the time being to the level of liberation so that they could be free from suffering. So those are the two goals for the sake of sentient beings. And then all the rest comes under it, not as the main goal, but as temporary ones. But those are all included in that. Nothing is left out. But the main goals, the sake of sentient beings that the Bodhisattvas aim at, is at the very least sentient beings becoming liberated, if possible, even brought to the same level as Buddhahood that the Bodhisattvas would attain. And in doing that, in wishing that I could lead them to full awakening, or at the very least to state of liberation, one is also wishing, not just empty-handedly, but wishing that they be complete with all the qualities it takes for them to be either liberated or fully awakened. And that includes becoming perfect in ethical conduct. And to be able to, so from this ethical conduct practice angle, one could see Bodhisattva taking this shape of wishing to bring all sentient beings to a level of ethical perfection. It's the same as Buddha would, but kind of emphasizing it from this particular pertinent context. And to be able to do that, one should be first and foremost living those ethical conducts and tamed, and to achieve full awakening, and as well as to be able to lead others to that state. So that's why their whole task falls into these two: taming themselves, or subduing their own unruly elements in their mind, and on the basis of that develop the progressive qualities to attain full awakening. And then the second is then to be able to do that same, to be able to help cause others to get that, to do that. But for that, one has to be tamed, and that's the reason there are these two broad practices for the Bodhisattvas. One called taming oneself, which are the 6 perfections, and the other one is taming others, or sometimes even called the dharmas of gathering sentient beings. Gathering sentient beings in the sense that when they gather, they will listen, they will be receptive, they will receive the instructions, teachings, and also have exposure to models, role models for them, and thus actually receive the blessing. But it is quite telling that 6 perfections, as much as it look like they are other-oriented, they have been listed as means to tame oneself. This is so important to remember, to reflect on. And this also points to what does perfection of sila, perfection of generosity means. It means perfection in the sense of a mental attitude. Not perfection in the sense of delivering the good to every sentient being, and thus every sentient being is delivered. Because that is a two-way road. That takes 2 to tango. It takes 2 to tango, right? And this is perfectly in line with the dependent origination concept, overall dependent origination concept. That's the reason why Buddhas, even Buddhas, if they were to be in front of us, the only way they could teach, the only way they could benefit us, unless we are specially karmically connected and karmically conditioned, then we could sometimes be accessing their visions, their bodily features, etc., and their activities otherwise, because they are also open to that. And except we are not receptive. Our camera is not that sophisticated to capture everything. So Buddhas have to wait until we ripen to receive. And that's the reason when we say that Buddha appeared some 2,500 years ago in the form that he did. Because at that time, the disciples were, the perfect disciples were present, who could receive him in the form that he did. Even in the form, from a Mahayana perspective, even that form that he did, the enactments of the deeds was like a combination of all that took for him eons in becoming Buddha, that he could enact in one life so that people could see it. But actual happened over countless eons. No single person could see that, see the whole enactment, see the whole journey. So that's the Mahayana take. Otherwise, the Theravada, the Pali tradition perspective is, yes, Buddha was Buddha was an ordinary being halfway through his life, and Then at the age of 35, he attained full awakening. But the main principle is the same. Yeah, so these perfections are called, these are mental qualities. And thus, on that basis, we can speak of perfection. Perfection in the sense of having developed those respective mental states to a state of perfection, to a state of nothing more needed to add to. Be there of giving. There's no holding back, fully giving, no restraint, no constraint, nothing. It has been developed to such a level. And at the level of the Buddhahood, it is even spontaneous. So when we call these perfection practices or paramitas, far-reaching or perfections, the reason why at that level of the practice it is called perfection is they are headed to perfection. They are not perfections themselves, but they are headed to perfection. They are aimed at arriving at perfection. That's why the cause have been named after the result that is aimed at. And the practices that one does from now onward are the means by which one could reach perfection. So the perfection creators are called the perfections. Maybe for some auspiciousness, but also with some connection with what the practices are aimed at. So likewise, we can speak of all the qualities in terms of the mental states. Let's move to the next one. Yes, the paramita of ethical discipline. I've been switching from calling it ethical conduct because I've been switching slides from different and didn't have time to make them consistent. So in the Bodhisattva context, there are, actually in all contexts, when we speak from a Buddhist perspective, when we speak of ethics, ethical conduct, first and foremost, the very basic ground of ethics takes the form of restraint, takes the form of abstention. It's not doing something, but not doing something. It takes the form of keeping oneself from engaging in misdeeds, in no wrong deeds. That's why the very basic nature of Shila is abstention to begin with. That's the foundation. And then build on that, then one could grow into then doing something on the basis of not succumbing to the negativities. Then one could build this next step of then on the basis of abstention from negativities and then forthcoming in doing positive actions. Because benefiting others can only come when it is grounded on not harming others. We cannot say, I want to harm them but benefit them. There's no way. Benefiting is grounded on not harming them in the first place. That's so essential. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, yeah. Even more? Yes, we can stay. Just explaining the etymology of the words Shila. Shila in Sanskrit. One is correct discipline or proper discipline. Sultim, Sulda Demba, proper, appropriate conduct or appropriate discipline. Because of being the cause of happiness and being sought after by the wise ones. Those who are smart, they choose this. Those who do not merely listen to self-centeredness, but listen to a wisdom, a wise, self-caring. Yeah, even Bodhisattvas have self-care, and self-care here is solely dedicated for the well-being of others. That's their way of self-caring, and they choose Shila as a means. That's the direct translation of Tibetan term Sultim. Yeah, correct discipline or proper discipline, proper conduct, because of being the cause of happiness. correct in the sense that it is the cause of happiness. That's very essential. Correct, not in political correctness, but correct in what they can deliver. And therefore sought after by the wise ones. Another is attaining coolness. This is not so explicit in that Tibetan term, but it is more direct to the Shila. It looks like what I'm calling etymology seems to be divided. The first one being more close to the Tibetan rendition of it, the second one with the original, Sanskrit original. So it has this connotation of coolness, attaining coolness, born of having extinguished the fire of remorse from accruing downfalls. If we do not engage in proper conduct, starting with abstaining from negativities, sooner or later we'll be consumed in our regret over the wrongdoings, particularly when we die. This is something very important to remember while we are alive. Very often people say that when they are close to dying, they kind of have a flashback of their entire life. That seems to be universal, irrespective of what their faith base is. And they have the full flash. Flashback, like movie being played in front of one's eyes. I think it's understandable. It's good because one is witness to all things that one has done, and even if one doesn't remember them, lively, closer to that, the imprints are imprints are all got there, and then a slight sense of worry or concern could trigger it, and that moment of one's life is so fertile for such things to happen. And very often one is kind of left to oneself to have all the world of time in going through all of those. So it's good to remember those and then kind of take charge of our own actions right here and now, and not let any lapses in one's conduct. Because one thing, by conducting oneself well, one will be benefiting here and there, and then in the long run. Just giving into some temptations, some habituation, etc., would not be worth it, because one may or may not feel good at that time. If so, it's just a fleeting one, and it will be gone very easily, followed by something unpleasant, and then it would have left that habit on us to kind of fall prey to it again and again and again, and in the course of time, one would have accrued so much negative actions. And then we can say, oh, we can purify, but we are all witness to how pure purification is hard to come by. It could be present with one thing, no, not the other. In all of this, most of the dharmas that we do are what we call, do you say, what is the term? Tatabata. Tau. No, it's not just check. What is the term? Checkered. What is checkered? Yeah, mixed. Ours is mostly white and dark. The negativities we perform pure negativity. The positivities we perform partial. They are kind of mixed bag. Yeah, it's so difficult to come by. And that's something we need to really remember and see for ourselves who we are. Not just say, oh, it should be okay, I'll be an exception. Because as much as we believe, and also seem to be the case, that nothing escapes conditioning. Nothing escapes dependent origination. Just about even the slightest move of a belief or whatever, it has a condition, it has to have a condition. That seems to be the normal way of happening. If that's the case, the way we are as a package, with our dispositions when we're born with the susceptibilities, sensibilities, proclivities, all of those. Very different from others, right? Where could this have come from? Yeah, one great reason for their being alive before, or in existence before the present one, is to look at our latencies, dispositions, and see where those could have come from. Very varied, very different. It's not uniform, and it's very mixed package. And where could that have come from? Maybe one way to explain it solely on the basis of material things, it will be very difficult. Very difficult. These days, even they are saying the so-called identical twins are also not identical. Where could that difference in the DNA come from? Yes. Yeah. So time gone past are gone. We can just look back and learn from them. But time in front of us, we have to really, really use it well. Because using well means being well also. It's not that we suffer by being good. But by pursuing proper conduct, we will not suffer. If we were to suffer, undergo suffering with that, then that's one thing. But that's not the case. Okay, yeah, so this part about the fires of remorse from occurring their downfalls. Okay, next one. Okay, yeah, okay, let's move one at a time. No, one at a time. Please hide that. Yeah, praise of this ethical discipline. This I took straight from the illumination of intent. I didn't make up. So most of the sources I took from most of the writings here. I took from sources, and then had them converted into English to the extent possible, and had it checked. Enjoying results of generosity in the higher realms. This is speaking of the order in which the paramitas are taught in the scriptures. Usually this order is to reflect what are easier, what are harder to do. That's one way of looking at it. In any way, the paramitas start with generosity, and the generosity, the result of generosity is you will become abundant in your needs, abundant in your material and other needs. That's what giving is. Interesting. When you give, you get paid. That makes perfect sense. In our, just as in one of the BBCs, Venerable Kunga shared it, in our ordinary way of reasoning, is like when you give, you lose. When you receive, you gain, right? So giving, how come giving can come back? That's the universal law. If we look very carefully, sometimes maybe you have noticed it. Very often this happens. Over time, when you set the intention to give, and then you have already given, just that same day you get given back. Very often that cannot be called coincidence, because it happens almost consistently. But when we speak of the result of giving in terms of receiving back, that's not necessarily always that quick. But nonetheless, it's quite amazing. So the result of giving is receiving back, right? Either in this very lifetime or in any of the future times when this particular karma ripens. But that is not considering the happiness, the joy, the sense of satisfaction that brings to you right then and there. That is not included in that result that we are talking of. So there's this additional bonus there also. So that's why when we practice generosity and not ethical conduct, then very probably it's just not impossible not to be born in the lower realms. When the impossible is eliminated, what is the expression? When the impossible is eliminated, whatever, however unpleasant the probability is, it must be true. Something like that. Okay, I was just. It is from. Oh, okay. It's from Sherlock Holmes. Where did he speak in Tibet?
When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
Anyway, what I don't know whether it actually matches with what I was trying to say or not. Whether I'm trying to say or not. Pardon? Okay, yeah. What I'm saying is, although you may think that it's impossible for me to be born in the lower realm, but because I've given so much, no, you have been lagging behind in your ethical conduct. That has been completely neglected. You maybe have been giving fully, whatnot, but ethical conduct you have lagged behind. It's impossible for not to be born in the lower realms because of the causes you have accumulated. However improbable it may look like, given what you have done in terms of generosity. So you kind of did generosity, we are completely blinded by it and completely overwhelmed by it or preoccupied with it and lagged behind in all other things, including ethical conduct. And this result in the lower realms is given. And thus, but at the same time, dependent origination of the law of causality is not partial, not selective. Because of that, your generosity will also still bear fruit. But where would it ripen? When you are born as animals. There are animals with huge wealth in their name, in the wills. While they are alive, they have no dearth of anything. But how do they enjoy? They can't buy any extra shoe, any shoes or anything. Yeah. So that's the reason. If you have, say, in this order of parameters, supposing that you have engaged in paramita, you have been good in doing it, you ensure that you experience the result of it, on a basis, on a birth, on a rebirth that would be much more worthy of receiving that fruit, that result. And then for that, then ethical discipline is what you need to then focus next, together with continuing to engage in generosity. So that's what ethical conduct can provide. Ethical conduct can deliver. No other practices. Can we say no other practices? Concentration leads to higher births. But I think it must be based on ethical conduct. No question about it. Just about any practice, any one of the six, any one of the rest of the six perfections has to have an ethical basis for it to have proper rebirth. Yeah, even in the scriptures it says very clearly, ethical conduct is the cause for higher rebirth, and also for liberation, because it's only through receiving repeated higher rebirths then one can hope to have liberation. Otherwise, there is no way. You could be breaking down, you could be breaking up on your practice. One time up, one time low, one time up, and never adding up. So anything more than what you had, or even could end in less. Okay, next one. Enjoying the results of generosity through successive lives. That's also ensured by, so suppose that one has gained a next rebirth in a higher realm and is able to enjoy the generosity results. Just so that you could continue to enjoy the generosity result, you should be able to engage in generous actions. Animals don't seem to do that. Come on, you share this. Sometimes they do share, but that's usually not the universal contact. And who knows if they are doing it with pure giving or what? I don't know. But even if they do, it's not that sophisticated kind of a consideration. Of course, not seeing their giving in this through the lens of three spheres being emptiness. So to keep enjoying the results of generosity through successive lives, because it's not just being rich and being affluent that's being talked about here. When one is affluent and rich and kind of has abundance, one would have one thing less to worry about, and one more opportunity to focus on Dharma. That's the main thing. That's why we have these prayers of not just being born as human, not just being born as human beings, not just being born as precious human beings, but even with what they call the 8 Nami Yalat Yende 8 Nami. If we translate directly, it is 8 ripening results, including health, wealth, all the other supportive environment. And based on that, then one would have easier path to succeeding on the spiritual path, in kind of continuing from where one had been and then building it leap by leaps and bounds. Next, please. Yeah, if we do not do that, it is extremely difficult to escape the lower realms. Once we enter lower realms, it's very difficult. I don't know in what in the world, what does it take to be born back into human beings. Because it's not just being born into a lower realm once, but while being there, you hardly have any idea of how to engage in positivity. And then sometimes even by your very survival method, you have to continuously engage in killing or harming. So not only one negative karma has plunged you there, but you keep on building, keep on almost continuously, without thinking, automatically, naturally, instinctively engaging in negativities one upon the other. So then, as an animal or any other lower realm beings, it's very difficult to hope that at the time of their death, they could be able to ripen a positive action within their mind stream, with a corresponding conducive condition. That's how it's so difficult. And the fact that we are human beings with this kind of privileges and whatnot, it's almost a marvel, a miracle. And having met with Dharma, if we let any lapse in this, then that's letting us down, ourselves down. Even in this very even in this practical one life perspective also, engaging in moral conduct is the most sensible way of living in a very, very sensible and healthy way. You could call it eco-friendly or whatever friendly, everything friendly way of living. Health friendly, mental health friendly, physical health friendly, just about everything friendly way of living. And then if we have this worldview extra, that should serve as an extra impetus to kind of really deliver on it. And then on that basis, we could develop concentration practices and wisdom. Yeah, then we can hope for the prospect being brighter and brighter going forward. Not just for our own benefit, the prospect for other sentient beings also grow with our being an additional Buddha there with a karmic condition that could resonate with the dispositions of other sentient beings. And being always available to be of service in the utmost effective way whenever it is needed. So in this, it is so essential to think deeply about dependent origination in general, and within that, the causal dependence. So essential. First and foremost, one should rule out the fact that there can be anything that happens without cause. Internal, external. And then think of where those causes might come from. What is the difference between the causes of features of experiences associated with our mind, and what are the causes and conditions of the external environment? How they are common? What are the common things? What are the uncommon things because of how distinct they are? It is so essential, and pursue it to the extent possible. I mean, in the scriptures, and I heard His Holiness the Dalai Lama also explain very carefully. It's not that we can hope to be perfect right away, but on our part, there shouldn't be any lapse of effort. We should be so convinced that one has done the best. Not in the eyes of others, but in one's own eyes. Very often His Holiness gives advice in gatherings, particularly when he is visiting some places and then leaving them. Just before he leaves them, he emphasizes on cultivation of the mind. Particularly, he brings this message saying, you should engage in your life in such a way that if one were to ask to oneself whether one has done well, one should be able to say yes, not what others say. And that can be ensured by putting one's effort to the extent possible in practicing the ethical disciplines and other practices. Let's move on to the next one. Reason for the discourse on ethical discipline coming after the discourse on generosity. Yeah, that kind of summarizes the first two. The discourse on generosity is not just that you will gain something, you will gain material abundance in return, but also that you would continue to do that. And the way to ensure that, but also that you will reap the result on a worthy base, and not just that you will continue to do so that it could be a facility to supporting your spiritual practice. And that speaks of why ethical discipline is the only means by which that could be assured. Is there anyone next to this? No? Okay, there's one more. Ethical discipline is the cause both of higher birth and of definite goodness. We all agree that it is the cause. I mean, the unique cause among the 6 perfections and among all other practices. Because when we speak of ethical discipline, we are speaking of our actions. Body, speech, and mind actions. It's not outside of it. And we say that it's the cause. The actions, they could have other results, but one of the most prominent results of them is what we call the throwing result, or its impelling result in the form of a birth, in the form of a rebirth. Any action could have varying range of results. One of them, the most prominent one, is its impelling result. Its capacity of bringing us into a particular rebirth. That we all agree. But what about definite goodness? Definite goodness, we say it comes from wisdom, concentration, wisdom particularly on the basis of concentration, with the support of patience, and sustained by joyous effort and generosity, all of them. How come we can single it out? Basically, it is so crucial to have higher rebirths, continuous higher rebirths, to be hopeful of attaining definite goodness. Other than that, all other practice will fall short of delivering that. That's the reason why it is linked with, why attainment of definite goodness is linked with the practice of ethical conduct. So in our prayers, when we make prayers, we have to remember not just to pray for next good rebirth. Of course, that's the first one, but then also pray at the same time, be very practical in delivering on them in terms of strengthening one's practices, so that there is more prospect of those same imprints to be easily activated. Yeah, one of the advices in an encouragement in engaging in pure ethical conduct as possible is with that engagement, one becomes more and more familiarized with it, habituated with it, and it becomes easier and easier to come by. And when that happens, then it doesn't take any much more condition to ripen it. A slight condition could ripen it. There are many cases of people being sparked right away into bodhicitta mode, into wisdom of understanding emptiness mode, by just mere mention of few words or mere sight of something that could just trigger a whole new world within their mind. Historically, we have seen Shariputra. That was quite something. Shariputra. All he heard from a Buddha's disciple was just this 4 lines. All phenomena comes from causes. And the causes have been identified by the Buddha. And that there is a cessation of those causes. It's also identified by the Buddha, or taught by the Buddha. Taught by the Buddha seems to have carry a strong, very heavy message there. He has seen it. He can reveal it. So with that, revelation of the truth of 4 Noble Truths, let's stop here for now. Oh, do you have a question? Okay, one. If people have questions, also feel free to ask in the course of the session also, because don't wait until the end. Just a quick one, sorry.
Geshe, I got 2 parts. The first part is how does the ethical conduct helps in the states of death? I mean, at the point of death. And why that do we take precepts till the point of death, not beyond, not like life after life, but Bodhisattva, we actually say until we awaken. Yeah.
Yeah, precepts help. I mean, I can address this in the afternoon session. Is that fine? Otherwise, we're already far behind the schedule. Yeah, I will remember them. Okay, thank you.
Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Thank you, Geshe. We can all stand while Geshe leaves, and then Tracy has a message for both our online and in-person audience. Tracy, you can come forward. You can come forward
here. If you'd like to have a seat for a second. The first thing I want to do is just really thank you for being here and for wanting to learn these teachings and for helping support the Abbey just by being a participant in the retreats and the teachings. And as Geshe was saying, it's just so incredibly rare and amazing that we have this opportunity, we have the karma, and we've created the causes and conditions to do this. So I think that you must have done this in many past lives and in this life, supporting the Abbey. And so once again, just thank you so much. But it did occur to me that part of our being generous and practicing the path is encouraging others to participate. So this time I'd like to encourage and suggest that we, each of us, find people that we could help practice their generosity in supporting the Abbey, and reach out to friends and family and networks and see if they too wouldn't want to be a part of this. A lot of people still don't know about the Abbey and what goes on here and what the intention and motivation is. And so this seemed to me like a new kind of way to support what's going on and support goodness and support others in reaching full enlightenment even. So unless they know about it, they won't be doing it. And we could be that factor that helps them ripen their previous karma. And so I'll just put that out there right now. If anybody wants to do something like an event or I don't know, ideas to help support the Abbey and the Buddha Hall, let me know. And once again, thank you for your generosity.